All right. Well, I'm very excited to be here with Britta Phillips. Britta, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You just got done. We're here at Pioneer Town at Pappy and Harriet's. Very interesting venue. We're actually in kind of a cabin right now. Or
It's
how would you?
backstage, but it's a little cabin.
It's a cabin green room.
Very nice backstage area. It's probably the nicest, one of the nicest.
Yeah. See, they spare no expense here at Pioneer Town. And you just got off the stage, and you guys played a fabulous set.
Thank you.
You and your band with Dean and your drummer. And not to spoil anything for the fans, because this may be a song that you may play at upcoming tours, but I gotta say that I'm a big fan of the Cars, and your version of Drive was absolutely beautiful. And is that a song that you play a fair amount, or was it
Yeah.
a special event that we got to hear that tonight?
No. I've been playing that at every show. It's a good way to end it because everybody likes that song.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of the Cars and other things, other fabulous influences, I wanted to ask you about some of your early influences. I know you did
How early?
the earliest memory
The
that you have.
very
The
early?
earliest memory. We're going way, way back. We're getting
That's
Freudian with
easy.
this.
I
Okay.
feel like the earliest ones are easy. Let's see.
It can
Well,
be
the
embarrassing
earliest-
too, but that's
All right,
okay.
I can give you there's like probably the earliest one I can remember is like Tiny Tim tiptoe through the tulips.
He was a surreal guy.
Yeah, he was a very interesting guy,
Yeah.
which had no idea at the time. I was just like loved it because
Yeah.
I was a kid. The first I Feel the Earth Move of Carol King. Yeah, Benny and the Jets.
Ooh, yeah.
That was a little older.
What was the first album that you ever
Oh.
purchased or obtained? Do you remember that memory? Yeah. What was that one?
Frampton Comes Alive.
Classic, classic.
Yeah, yeah.
Show me the way. Yes.
Yeah, I saw him play a show in a gold lame jumpsuit when I was a young teen.
And it forever brought you down a course of musical expression to this day. And I didn't see you with gold lame, but maybe next time.
Yeah, I would love to wear a jumpsuit every day. I would like to have 4 jumpsuits, one for every season.
Ooh, that's nice.
It would be so easy to just get dressed
Well,
every day.
You know, speaking of jumpsuits, from what I understand of your career, you've had a very diverse background, and you've been able to sort of jump from one topic or one skill set to another, and starting out doing basically a voice work from the '80s in the cartoon Gem, which I remember that, and it was fabulous, and I know that Gem. In talking to a lot of female musicians, people wouldn't really think about this, but I'm sure you get this all the time. Young female acts or all girl bands or whatever that talk about, wow, Jem was like She-Ra and other things was a really positive sort of role model for me as a female. What kind of stories have you heard from people, from fans?
God, so many. It's hard. I mean, the ones that are most moving to me, obviously, if it's inspiring women to make music, that's fantastic.
Beautiful, yeah.
Often I hear, as I've been to a couple of Gem cons,
Okay.
where those are the uber fans.
Hardcore. I've heard about the My Little Pony cons and all that. So
There was a Gem con, and I went to 2, and I've heard stories from people who have said, they had very difficult childhoods, and that's a show
they really sort of
they attach
attached
it's
to
like it's a safe
Yeah.
escape, safe place, and so those are the movie. I don't want to get into details because they're heavy, some of
Deep
them.
stories.
Yeah.
But from the kind of more on the lighthearted, I guess, the musical end. I mean, people saying, "Man, when I was a kid, I saw that show. It was rad. It was Gem and the Rockers, and you guys were trying to compete against the Misfits. Glenn Danzig and Doyle, those guys never sued the show for trademark infringement for punk co-opting or whatever. But
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
the female
They
Misfit.
figured no one would mistake them for the band.
That's yes, I think that's right. That's right. Well, and then beyond, in terms of jumping from skills from that into acting, I actually remember this movie, the 1988 flick Satisfaction, with Julia Roberts and who else was on there? Justine Bateman. I loved her. I had a crush on her.
Liam Neeson was in it. Can you believe it? And Deborah Harry. Debbie Harry was in it.
Wow.
And I got to meet her, which made my head explode.
And for those that don't know the premise of the movie, it was a lot of pretty young women, skilled musicians doing their thing and making it in the music world. And like Gem, Yeah, I mean, a lot of themes there.
Yeah,
Female
girl
empowerment, girl.
bands.
I'm sensing themes here in your career of
I
different.
I had no plan. It just sort of
Yeah.
happened, which is one of the reasons I called my album Luck or Magic, because it's sort of I really didn't
Yeah.
plan anything. I
Yeah.
just feel I don't know.
Yeah. It's
Call
sort
it
of,
luck or magic
yeah.
or fate.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your most recent album, Luck and Magic, I wanted to talk to you about sort of the creative process and differences in that album versus some of the other albums you've put out in different bands, including Luna and your work with Dean. How would you sort of describe this most recent album in terms of being different than your other works?
Wow, it's hard to describe.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted it to be the records Dean and I make together as Dean and Britta are more um, romantic. I mean, I definitely have some romantic songs,
Yeah.
but I wanted to try to write some of the original songs I wrote are a little a little more like a little darker or manic
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
relation being in love or
Okay.
you know love
Not
is
warm.
isn't an exquisite torture.
Yeah.
It can't, it
Yeah.
is like falling in love is
And you're
the
raw and
same
you're
kind of
vulnerable.
feeling as when you're like, losing your mind or something.
Yeah,
Slightly.
It probably affects the
So,
brain. It's like anxiety and excitement are exactly
yeah.
the same, but the brain interprets them
Yeah.
differently. Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to go into like sort of a little darker little alleys,
Yeah,
but still have it be kind of blissful sounding
Yeah.
and empowering also, because when you fall in love, you feel kind of helpless and weak. And so when I was writing these songs as kind of about falling in love and putting a spell on myself that felt like I was taking charge.
Okay.
That's what
Okay.
singing and listening to songs can kind of be. It's like a mantra that
Yeah.
makes you feel different about things.
Do things just come to you, or do you really sit down and concertedly focus your energy in, writing lyrics or working through some instrumental stuff? What does the creative process look like for you?
I mean, it's never neat. It's always kind of messy. And again, I hate to use the word magic again, but it has that feeling where sometimes the best stuff just pops out, and I don't feel like I really had anything to do with it. I just am like, how did I get this?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was I just feel very fortunate
You were
to
like
have
a vessel. You were a vessel that sort of transmitted
I don't know
something.
how to, yeah, explain. It's not like I was thinking word for well. This, I mean, sometimes I will sit down. I'd say the which is the right brain, the left brain. The left brain is more like an editor. So all the creative stuff just it flies out, flies all around, and you try to catch it before you forget. A lot of the times, stuff comes to me right as I'm falling asleep, and then it's like, all right, get up and write it down.
Or dreams too in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Sometimes I haven't written it down thinking I'll remember, and it just, no, it's gone.
Wow.
I mean, maybe it came back. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Interesting.
so I think, yeah, the getting down to business is editing, and the critical and critiquing it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think like necessarily everything that flows out of me is like worth listening to.
Some musicians talk about most of the real work is the editing process. You sort of throw up things cathartically like a Jackson Pollock painting, and then you gotta buff it out and contain it and clean it up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes I'll just, music is really easy. That I can just sort of generate all the time.
Yeah.
But I would say lyrics, that's the stuff that it takes. Sometimes it doesn't take any time, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but when I have to finish a song, usually it's like, and sometimes I'll just be playing a guitar and making up sounds and making up words, and then your brain kind of makes connections and will. It'll make sense out of something eventually, and a lot of it is subconscious too. So. You can worry about it in your conscious mind, but I feel like if you just sort of have it on your mind, stuff gets figured out.
talking about music, and we talked about some of your early influences. When you were coming up, sort of when you were in the Bell Towers and other bands, sort of like in the 80s and stuff, I'm a big fan of sort of 80s college rock and college radio and punk and all the things going on in the 80s. It was such a vibrant scene. And for you, when you were coming up as a musician, what was that like? I mean, did you collaborate with other bands that we may know from that era, or it was more later with Luna and other projects where?
Bell Tower was the first real band I was in.
Yeah.
I was in a cartoon band and then a movie band and then
And then
the
a
Bell
real
Tower.
band.
And we
Yeah.
moved to London, which I guess we moved there in '89, so we're
Mhm.
right on the end. So I was there when, Galaxy 500 was in the Melody Maker
Yeah.
and Teenage Fan Club and
Yeah.
all these,
Wow.
My Bloody Valentine. So
Yeah.
it was great for me moving. Even though I had lived in New York, I got exposed to so much more music
Yeah.
because of the country's very small and they have that one big radio station and the music papers. So you just get everything,
And
all the cool
you
shit.
get John Peel to play your stuff. Boom. Yeah, we've done a lot of interviews with different artists about his influence, even for 70s punk, Mark Gardner from Ride, Deb Goosh from My Bloody Valentine. And I love John Peel's sort of one of my idols, even though I wasn't British. Just to think of I would argue there probably have been few singular people whose DNA has touched upon, Rodney on the Rock, maybe here in LA, up there, no doubt, but John Peel, maybe the ultimate. But
This country is so big
Yeah.
that it's harder to just get noticed here, which is one of the reasons we, as a band, moved over there, was just so we could tour a country and get seen.
it's interesting too, because usually when we do interviews, we hear about the opposite. We hear about bands across from the Atlantic coming over here and being, hanging out or staying here, but not as many stories. I know, but it's not the first time that's happened. I know folks like even Chrissy Hine back in the day came across and was doing some stuff with Malcolm McLaren, and it didn't quite work, and then she went back to the U.S. and the Pretenders. But that was an interesting scene, late 80s, the Manchester scene. There was a lot of interesting experimentation going on.
Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
Manchester's. I wish I had spent more time there, but I was based in London. No.
London's no.
And that another thing about being in England that it was surprising after living in New York. Maybe I just didn't know the right people in New York. Sometimes it's all about what neighborhood you're in. Because I know Dean was there at the same time I was.
Wow.
If
But
I
you
had
guys never actually crossed paths
no,
back then.
not
Okay.
until 2000.
Okay.
But I found out a lot about American bands. When I moved there, like
Interesting.
Sonic Youth and all.
It had more critical followers in the UK than here in the States, kind of.
Yeah, they were just everyone that you would run into would know who they were. Right? I don't know. Maybe it was just the people I was keeping company with. But I feel like it was easier to find out about all those underground bands or whatever you would call indie now.
Indie, yeah, UK indie or whatnot, yeah. But I love, that's my heart, that's my era, and I wasn't around in the late 70s to see the punk or CDBG, but I remember the late 80s, early 90s, and the pre-Nirvana years, sort of, yeah.
Yeah. No, I missed all. I was around then, but I was in rural Pennsylvania in the late 70s, so I was just like classic rock. Except for the Talking Heads. I knew who they were because they were on the radio.
Were you anywhere near Hershey, Pennsylvania?
No, I was kind of Bucks County. I wanted to live on a farm when I was a kid for some reason. I don't know.
Okay.
I had a fantasy about that. I didn't know I was going to be a musician until I started singing in my car. I didn't know I could sing loud
Wow.
until I was in my car.
So we thought, that thing that's going on, car karaoke, you were like a visionary around that way back.
Great way to learn how to. Because when do you have privacy? I mean, when can you really just let it out?
Even in the shower, people talk about singing in the shower. It's like you don't have
alone or you don't have neighbors. It's like a car. That's the place.
Yeah.
That's you can try it all out there,
Yeah.
and nobody's gonna laugh.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna hear.
No. It's got to be surreal to be playing with Teenage Fan Club, who certainly had a huge left an indelible mark on music. But in terms of like current bands that are out there, maybe contemporary bands or maybe bands from a while back, what are you spinning at home? What's on your turntable? What do you listen to in your car?
Right now, I really like Unknown Mortal Orchestra. I like Tame Impala. I love Angel Olsen and Kate LeBon. So, yeah, those are up there. Paper Cuts is another great band. San Francisco band now, LA based. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, for the fans out there, in terms of upcoming projects, got a big tour right now with Teenage Fan Club, going to a lot of venues, interesting things. What can fans out there expect from Britta here in the coming year?
Um, Going on tour with Luna because we have a new Luna album
Awesome.
in the fall. I may be doing more touring.
Okay.
This popped up, so maybe another tour will pop up.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, it sounds like you're a very zen person. Go with again, looking at your career, transitioning adeptly from one thing to another, and just kind of maximizing the experience. And
I like to try things out, and that's sort of. I've done voiceovers too for Adult Swim shows.
I was going to mention that moral oral. I mean, to have Adult Swim.
A different world, I know.
Yeah. And so, what on your resume is it hard to get a job, or do you just say, "Listen, I was the original voice of Jem back in the '80s," and they go, "Okay, come on into Adult Swim"? Does that give you a lot of?
No, it's really a friend of mine, Dino, who created the show. I just told him, I'm an actor, and let me audition, and I auditioned, and That's all.
That's cool. That's
You just put yourself out there, be available, and if you keep trying. That's my only advice.
That's your advice for the fans. Just keep
I don't know, because sometimes people ask me, and I'm like, I don't know. I just, if you like somebody, and you want to work with them, let them know, and maybe you never know. That's all.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that those are fine words of wisdom here to wrap things up. And we can take that advice to heart and find some inspiration in that. And cool. Well, thanks, Britta, for all your time. And we look forward to following you here in the next year.